Welcome to the Artwork of You, the podcast where your life is the canvas and you are the masterpiece. I'm your host, Lori Gouhin, and together we'll explore creativity, self-awareness, mindset, goal strategy, and the importance of accountability so that you can paint your life's portrait with confidence and ease. Remember, in the gallery of life, you're not just a spectator, you are the art. So let's grab our brushes and start creating the masterpiece that is you. Hello, my friends. I am so glad that you are here with me today because today I want to talk about museums. And so I got a lot of really thoughtful feedback on episode 87, If Your Life Were a Painting, Would You Be Proud to Hang It Up? And it got me thinking about the idea, I guess you could say, in a broader context. I wanted to explore it from a different angle. And that's what led me to today's episode, thinking about life not just as something we create, but more as something we curate, like a museum exhibit. And so, if your life were a museum exhibit right now, as it is, what would be on display? What would people see? What would they feel as they moved through the rooms of your experiences, your choices, habits, values, your dreams? Would it feel cohesive or a little chaotic? Would it feel like you or something you've outgrown? Because sometimes when we look at our lives from a slightly removed lens, like a curator walking through a museum, we start to notice what's there by intention and what's there by default. So today we're going to walk through your personal exhibit, not with judgment or with pressure to have it all perfectly hung and well lit, just curiosity and awareness, and maybe even a little bit of inspiration to change what's on display moving forward. And so let's start with this question. Who's actually been curating your life? When you think about a museum exhibit, nothing ends up there by accident. There's a curator deciding what belongs, what doesn't, and what story is being told through each piece of art. And that same principle applies to your life, whether you're aware of it or not. So, are you the one deciding what goes on display? Or have you been outsourcing that role? Maybe to other people's expectations, or maybe to routines that no longer make sense, or possibly to the version of you from 5 years ago who wanted totally different things than you do now. I think a lot of us are walking around with rooms full of stuff that we didn't even consciously choose. Maybe beliefs that got handed down, or commitments that we never revisited, or habits that we just kept because they were already there. It's like someone else arranged the whole exhibit and we just never questioned it. But when you pause and you ask, wait a minute, who picked this? You start to see what's actually yours and what's inherited, assumed, or possibly outdated. And just like a museum changes exhibits over time, you're allowed to change what you're showcasing in your life. You're allowed to say, this used to belong here, but it doesn't anymore. Again, this isn't about judging what's there, it's about noticing, because noticing is the first step to curating something that reflects who you are now, not who you used to be or who you think you're supposed to be. So here's something to ask yourself. If I were curating my life exhibit on purpose, what would I want people to see? And maybe more importantly, what would I want to see? All right, so imagine that we're walking into the first gallery room of your exhibit. Maybe the walls are painted in a tone that reflects your current season of life. Maybe it's bold and vivid, or maybe it's soft and muted, or maybe it's some strange, I don't know, in between gray that you didn't even really choose, but you just ended up with it. And to the left, you see a large wall that's labeled, Who Am I? Or Who I Am, either one. This is where your identity is displayed. The roles that you're most known for are going to be front and center. And here are some examples. Maybe it's the fixer, always the one smoothing things over, even when it's not your responsibility anymore. Or maybe it's the one who never needed help, a self-sufficient identity that makes it hard to receive support. Or maybe it's the overachiever. You're still working for those gold stars like you were back in elementary school, but nobody's actually keeping score. Or maybe it's the fun one. You built your whole personality around being easygoing, even when you're exhausted. Or the reliable employee, still defining yourself by a job that you quietly outgrew maybe 5 years ago? Or the rebel, holding on to your edge, even though what you really want now is peace and stability? Or the always busy one, you're using productivity as a way to feel worthy, about craving that love and attention maybe that you never got. But that's not even what you want anymore. You want more quiet time. You don't want to be the busy one. Or maybe it's the successful entrepreneur. You're still clinging to a business model or a brand that doesn't fit who you are now. Or maybe it's the one who never settled down and an identity that once felt empowered, but now feels a little disconnected from your current desires. Or maybe it's the life of the party, a role that you kept playing even though you'd rather be home by 9 o'clock. Or the one who always says yes. That's rooted in past people pleasing, and you have definitely outgrown that now. Maybe it's the stay at home mom, even though your kids are older and you would like to start a creative pursuit. And so, if you look at some of those roles, some of them might have expired. And are you still showcasing your identity from 5 years ago just because it's familiar? And are there pieces missing, maybe parts of yourself that you don't usually share, but you wish were more visible? Next, we'll enter what I'll call the success hall. In this room is full of framed moments, right? Like degrees, promotions, awards, maybe social media milestones, maybe a plaque from when you were employee of the month back in 2010, or a blown up screenshot of your viral post from years ago that made you finally feel seen for a few minutes. Maybe you're still showcasing the moment you got into that prestigious program or Ivy League school or landed a high paying client. This is where people, I'd say, sometimes become frozen in their best moment. And it makes me think of, I don't know if you've seen the movie Napoleon Dynamite, but Uncle Rico, who was still talking about his high school football glory days as if nothing better could ever happen in his life. So, are there parts of your story that you're clinging to because you're afraid maybe you peaked back then and you think nothing worthwhile has happened since? Maybe there's something quietly spectacular that you've never put on display because you didn't think it counted, like leaving a toxic job or starting over when you were 47. Next, we're going to move into the work in progress room. And that's a roped off section with a sign that reads, "Coming soon." This room holds your unfinished dreams and ideas. Maybe the book you started writing but never touched again after chapter 2, or the art studio that you plan to set up when things calm down a bit, or the business idea that you light up talking about but you don't have the confidence to start, or possibly the healthy relationship or healthy body that you desire but never prioritized. Some of these items in this room are covered in dust, and others are ready to go, but they're still waiting to be seen. Would someone walking through assume that the room is abandoned, or would it be considered to be under active renovation? And off to the side of that room, mostly hidden, is a door to a locked room, and it's called private collection. And this is where you store the parts of your life you don't talk about, the trauma you minimize, the reinventions that didn't go the way you had hoped, maybe the times that you were completely lost, or a moment you're proud of, but you think that no one seemed to notice. A passion maybe that you buried because someone told you it wasn't practical. And these aren't necessarily things to hide. They just haven't been acknowledged as part of your masterpiece yet. And finally, we'll go into the interactive installation room. And this is the part of your life that other people engage with directly. How you show up in your relationships, your conversations, your routines. This is the space where your energy is most felt. Does it feel present or preoccupied? Does it feel like a space where people get the real you or just a curated version? You might see a loop playing of your daily habits, like you making dinner while you're checking emails or saying, "I'm fine," even when you're not. Or maybe you're binge watching shows because of the discomfort of wanting something else, wanting something more. And you might also see moments of real alignment, like you teaching something you deeply care about. Or maybe you're dancing in the kitchen, or you're sitting on the floor with someone you love and you're fully present. And so now I want you to take a wide angle view of your whole exhibit. What's the emotional tone of this exhibit? Does it feel alive and evolving? Or does it feel like it's stuck in a past season? Is there too much crammed in with no breathing room? And are you displaying parts of yourself that you've outgrown because you don't know what you would replace them with? And most importantly, if you didn't know it was yours, your exhibit, would you want to walk through it again? And now ask yourself, who are you curating all this for? Because the thing about a museum is it's not just about the art, it's about the audience as well. So, who are you imagining walking through this space? Is it strangers to be impressed, or your parents who never quite got what you do for a living? Maybe your peers or online followers who only know the polished version of your life? Maybe it's your ex, or your high school rival, or your inner critic. Or maybe it's all of the above. If you're being honest, you might realize that a lot of the rooms in your exhibit have been designed with someone else's reaction in mind. You choose a job because it sounded respectable, not because you loved it. Or you curated a version of yourself online that's easy to digest, but it's not entirely real. Or you stayed in a relationship or a friendship because people told you it looked perfect. Or you pursued a goal just because it came with applause, and now you're stuck maintaining something you don't even want. And so now imagine walking through your exhibit and seeing little plaques under each item. And on these plaques, it'll say something like, added to make my parents proud, kept for the likes. This piece stayed because I didn't want to be seen as a quitter. Or this was never for me, but it got approval, so here we are. And just to be clear, none of that makes you wrong. It makes you human, right? Because we all want to be seen and we all want connection and recognition. But if your entire life exhibit is curated for them, then where are you? What would shift if the audience changed? What if the only person walking through was you 5 years from now? Would she be proud? Would she feel seen? Would she feel a sense of alignment and purpose? Or would she wonder who all this was for? Maybe it's time to close the museum for a private showing, to stop designing your life for public approval and start creating it for personal truth. You get to decide. Is this exhibit about what looks good or what feels right? And remember also, great exhibits are not permanent. Museums rotate their collections, not because the pieces are bad, but because it's time for something else to take the spotlight. And so now ask, what in your life needs to be rotated out? What are you still displaying because it used to matter, even though it doesn't anymore? Maybe you're still putting your college degree on a pedestal, even though your current work has absolutely nothing to do with it, and it hasn't for years. Or maybe you're still highlighting your past relationship as some sort of proof that you're lovable, even though it ended for a reason and you're not that person anymore. Sometimes we keep certain pieces front and center, not because they represent who we are now, but because they made us feel valuable at that time. And we think that if we take them down, we'll lose that validation. But here's the truth: when you leave everything up indefinitely, the exhibit gets cluttered and nothing will stand out, and the story gets confusing. A rotating exhibit makes space, it gives context. It says, I'm evolving. So take a look at your metaphorical museum that we're talking about, this exhibit, and ask, what am I still showcasing because I invested so much in it? What am I afraid to take down because it's been part of my identity for so long? And what am I keeping up just to avoid disappointing someone or disrupting some kind of narrative that I think is important? This is also where we get stuck, I would say. And what I would like to say is obligation display. Maybe something like that board seat that you didn't really want, but you felt like you had to say yes to. I live in an HOA, so I see this sometimes with people. Maybe it's that service that you offer because it pays well, even though you secretly dread doing it. Or the brand that you built, but it no longer fits, but you don't want to confuse your audience by shifting. Or maybe it's the monthly dinner with people that you don't even truly connect with. You're allowed to pivot. You're allowed to say, this piece had its time and I'm grateful, but I'm no longer curating around that. It doesn't have to be dramatic. You're simply choosing to rotate it out to make space for what fits now. That's what a curator does. And guess what? You're the curator. And so let's talk for a minute about something I think people often overlook in a museum, and that's the design of the space. The art might get all the attention, but what makes an exhibit unforgettable isn't just what's on the walls, it's how it's presented. Because, from my opinion, the best exhibits are never crammed. There's room to breathe. Each piece has space around it, and you're invited to pause, to actually see it. And the lighting is intentional. It highlights what matters and it softens what doesn't. And there's a flow to walk through, there's a natural progression, and you're guided, you're not overwhelmed. So, does your life feel like that? Or have you packed it wall to wall with things that you think should be there? Does anything even get its own spotlight? Or is everything fighting for attention? Is there a rhythm to how your days move, or are you just reacting to whatever shows up? Because when you walk through a beautifully designed exhibit, you feel it. Again, it's not chaotic. You're not overstimulated. You're more drawn in and curious and calm and present. In contrast, when an exhibit does feel cluttered or directionless, you tend to move through it very quickly and you miss things. You feel like maybe you're supposed to get it, but you don't. It's somewhat disorienting, I would say. And so now ask yourself, is your life giving people that same experience? Do the most important parts of you even have space to be noticed and to shine? Or are they shoved into a storage room? And what about the lighting? What are you unintentionally spotlighting? Is it the overworked, always available version of you that's getting the best lighting? Maybe your creativity and your joy sits in the dark? Even the pacing of your day, I would say, matters. In a museum, you're not supposed to rush. Again, you're not going through the whole thing in 20 minutes. You wander, you absorb, you take your time. But when's the last time you did that in your actual life? If you were designing this experience for others to walk through, would you keep the layout as it is, or would you make edits and rearrange the order and move some things into storage and finally give your best work the space it deserves? Are you willing to be deliberate? Your life is already full of stories and meaning and beauty. But without thoughtful design, the people walking through, including you, might miss it entirely. And so to wrap it up, if your life were a museum exhibit and the opening was tonight, would you be excited to let people in? Or would you be quietly hoping that no one showed up because it's not quite ready? Not because you need more time to be perfect, but because deep down, you know some of what's on display isn't fully you anymore. That hesitation, that gut feeling, that's your inner curator speaking up. Not to criticize, but to collaborate, to help you rework what's on the walls, to remind you that you're allowed to update the story as you grow. You don't need to overhaul everything overnight, but you do get to ask, what would make this exhibit feel more aligned, more alive, more like me? That's where the magic is, in the adjustments, in the choosing, and in the ownership. Because whether you realize it or not, the doors are already open. People are walking through every single day. So the real question is, are you showing them the version of your life that you want to live in and that truly reflects who you are? That's a wrap for today, my friends. Thank you for sharing your time with me. And remember to show up in your life like the masterpiece you are, because you are the artwork. Please subscribe and leave a 5-star review. Have a fabulous day.